For me, brand purpose means that the usage of your product delivers disproportionate and outsized benefit to the customer and beyond. But first, it has to start with that disproportional benefit to the customer.
I'm Eric Fulwiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from leading brands and brains, rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today. Hey everyone, my guest today, John Sheldon, CMO of SmileDirectClub. So, I've had a lot of different guests on this show. I think SmileDirectClub and John probably fit the mold of challenger brand, challenger CMO, to a T. They are not only a challenger within their category to Invisalign, which is kind of the Goliath, and obviously they're more than a David now. They're publicly traded in SmileDirectClub, but challenging them. And it was interesting hearing John talk about how to kind of make it a two-horse race, how as a challenger, you need to have an enemy, you need someone to push off of. But also they're challenging the incumbent solutions within their category, which is braces. So really interesting conversation, just kind of getting into the mindset and getting into the strategy and the team of a true challenger marketer. What I loved and really related to, and I've talked about this in a lot of interviews, but it really comes through in what John says explicitly and then also implicitly, is just the need to focus on the customer and how so many of the answers, so many of the innovation and growth opportunities, challenger growth opportunities come from that. So it was great to hear how he does that with his team down to the tactical level of the meetings that he puts in place. We talk about a bunch of other things, their success on TikTok, how they think about brand purpose. Lots of good stuff in this episode. I know that you are going to enjoy it. So without further ado, please enjoy my interview, my conversation with John Sheldon of SmileDirectClub. Hey, John, how you doing today?
Things are really good. Thank you. How are you doing?
I am good. I am really looking forward to this conversation because, as I said before we pressed record, I first kind of heard about you and the work that you're doing at SmileDirectClub from an article way back in January, I realized. So it's been a little while. I know it's taken us time to actually set up the recording, but based on what you've done on TikTok, there was a great article that I know we're going to talk about, but actually digging into what you're doing at SmileDirectClub and also your career and background, I think it's really fascinating to have you on the show. It's all about challenger marketing, and you both in big incumbents like MasterCard and also in true disruptive businesses like Fresh Direct and SmileDirectClub. Like, that's a lot of what you've done. So really excited to get into it with you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So let's start with a couple of the warm-up questions. So first, would love to hear, what's a brand that you are obsessed with or very fascinated by right now in any category?
Yeah, well, when I think about brands, I spend a lot of time looking at. I've spent a lot of time looking at Peloton, and obviously they've had it's been bumpy for them a lot recently. But overall, as a brand, I think they've done some really interesting things. And as we've both kind of grown up, we're in the same cohort of startups, if you will. We started roughly the same time. We grew roughly the same time. And they were always kind of like our older brother that was about 6 to 9 months ahead of us in IPO and a bunch of other things. I've been watching them really closely, through their ups and some of the challenges that they've faced. And I think they've done a great job of building community. And I think they've done a really good job of building the brands of their instructors and helping those folks to become really meaningful. And people get really personally connected with those instructors. And it's one of those things when you hear, when two people with a Peloton, I have one, when two people with a Peloton talk, you're like, who's your favorite instructor? That comes up right away. And I think that, some of the elements that they've built there are really interesting. I think, they went really fast into some key brand building out areas, from performance marketing, and then really started building out some brand building. Right, they showed up in the Olympics like 4 years ago, and they were so young at a time to go do that. And I was really I really admired how they did that and the investments that they've made there.
So it's interesting you say Peloton, and actually our other podcast, which is like a weekly marketing news show, we recorded it yesterday, and one of the articles that we covered was Peloton outsourcing production and all the hardware now. And the guest that we had on, Robert Rose, I don't know if you know him, he's like, well, to me, this kind of smells like a consulting firm coming in and saying, hey, shed the dead weight, shed the overhead to help get you ready for a sale. But the thing is, so we haven't talked about this, and obviously, this is the first chat that we've had, but in our business, while we're working with challenger brands, it's kind of how we describe it. Actually, what we're interested in is what makes successful challenger brands. And we're trying to brand those as rival brands. TBD whether or not that's going to stick. But I think there's something interesting to the idea of actually challenger brand is a statement of intent, not accomplishment. And there's so many of them, particularly now. It's such an overused term in the industry, I feel like. And so what is it about certain challenger brands that makes them successful? And Peloton is the example that one of my co-founders uses as an unsuccessful challenger brand. They've obviously done a lot right, and they've built to some degree, very successful business, very strong brand, very engaged community. There's a lot that has gone well for them, but actually they haven't, I would argue, haven't truly succeeded in disrupting and becoming the incumbent in a category. And if you look at some of the headwinds that they're facing now, not just on the hardware and supply chain and like the economics of their business, but even on the brand and the percentage of people that are potentially looking to cancel based on surveys they've done, and the percentage of people that are actually interested in signing up for more of a product and a subscription like that, they've done a lot of the challenger things right, but somewhere along the line, it hasn't turned into them actually being successful at disrupting the industry, I would argue.
Yeah, one of the things I think, to use your phrase, rival brands need is an enemy, is the person they're challenging, right? Mac versus PC, classic version of that, right? Very very clear thing that you're pushing off of, and I think what they haven't done is identified and then done a really good job of pushing off of that in a rival brand status, and for me, I think that's a really important part of being a challenger brand is that knowing who are you challenging and why, and actually making it clear to everybody that you're challenging them and why you think you have the right to do that. When we launched our challenger campaign, and let me back up a second. So SmileDirectClub introduced a whole new audience and whole new segment of the market to being able to access teeth straightening and orthodontia when we launched the business. And these are the people who can't afford $68,000 to go to their orthodontist, but are looking to have their teeth straightened. And because of the nature of the vertical business model we built, we were able to offer them a very effective doctor-directed teeth straightening for about $2,000. And so we opened up a brand new market for teeth straightening. And so, but once we've built that, once we got that up and really truly effective in every way to deliver an excellent experience, what we realized is it's not just for those people who never had access before, but actually 80-90% of the overall current orthodontic market would also tremendously benefit from using our product via the customer experience that we've created. And we realized that about 18 months ago, and we were all the way there. And so that's when we said, okay, it's time to move from being the disruptor that came into the market and flipped over the tables and did something nobody had ever done, and actually transition from being a disruptor to being a challenger. Now, in our world, the brand that we're challenging is the only brand in orthodontia worth talking about, which is Invisalign, besides us. And our job was, hey, let's make this a two-horse race, right? They're a $50 billion company. They've done a great job with their branding. They're in some ways the Kleenex of the industry, right? People call us all the time with our product and say, I'm wearing my Invisaligners right now. And we're like, please don't say that, it kills us, right? So that gives us somebody to push off of, right? And that's why when we were able to launch our challenger campaign, for example, in television and some of the digital work that we've done, we made the risky call to actually call them out by name and actually say, hey, listen, this is better than those guys, and for a lot of reasons that we think that we are and that our model allows. And so I think that's just to tie it back to your point about Peloton. I think they haven't pointed at the other parts of the market that they've done better than, and pushed off of that in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. Just a quick side note. I've always been fascinated by the orthodonture teeth straightening industry. And bear with me for a second. I had braces. My wife had braces. We all had braces back in the 80s and 90s. But it seems insane to me that the solution for crooked teeth is still to glue pieces of metal to people's mouth and then slowly tighten them over time. So this is neither here nor there, but I just realized, because I hadn't even put it together with this conversation, that I actually have a very personal interest in what you're doing, and I should look it up. Do you guys sell in the UK? Because my oldest daughter is going to be in need of something like this very soon.
We absolutely do. In fact,
Excellent.
it's one of those things when we launched in the UK. Everybody's like, isn't that kind of obvious with all the jokes? But the short version is, it's been a great market for us, and so love, our London locations are some of the busiest we have in the entire network. And for us, but first of all, to be clear, we don't glue anything to your teeth. Even Invisalign does that. They put buttons and attachments on your teeth and things. The system that we utilize for people who have mild to moderate teeth straightening needs doesn't actually require anything to be attached to your teeth. And actually, we have two formats. So for your daughter, and a lot of teen parents really like this model, we have a version that's just something that you wear for 10 hours continuously at night. So the teen can go to school, nothing's happened, not wearing anything on their teeth, whatever, come home after dinner, brush your teeth, put these on 10 hours later. And obviously, because you're not wearing them full time, the system takes a little longer, but by the way, by a little longer, it's way shorter than braces, right? It's like an average of 7-8 months. You can have your teeth straightened via clear aligners, and nobody even knows you were doing it, other than the fact that all of a sudden you've got this end result. And parents love it because you don't have to worry about your kid taking them out, not wearing them, losing them, etc., because it's just going to sit on their nightstand, and just make sure that they put them in after dinner, and that's a model that parents seem to really gravitate toward.
Yeah, well, definitely an industry ripe for disruption. I actually had no idea Invisalign was a $50 billion company, but
A huge
I guess
company.
that makes sense. So I'm thinking about where to go from here, because it's very clear 10 minutes in, we are going to run out of time. So I might kind of throw the standard questions out the window, because there's a few things I know I want to talk to you about, and I don't think we're going to get to all of it. So why don't we go back a little bit? Let's talk about you. So I will have given kind of the CV overview in the intro to the episode, but I guess the question that I want to ask, or the way I want to tee it up, knowing your background, and even in your LinkedIn bio, you say you're CMO and innovation leader, scaling disruptive brands. So you've worked in challengers like SmileDirectClub, like FreshDirect, like others, but you've also worked in incumbents trying to think and act like challengers, your innovation role at MasterCard. What have you learned over the years in marketing/innovation roles about how you actually create disruption in the market? I know it's a super broad question, but it's intentional, because I kind of want to see where you take it, and then we can kind of double click on that. I'm just curious, of all the things that drive innovation, what are the most important to you with all the experience that you have doing this type of work?
Well, I think the piece that's the most important, and I'm going to just abstract this for a second, is knowing your customer at a really deep level, and what are their core needs, and so on. And so, whether it's Fresh Direct or Smile Direct Club, or all of the things that we were doing at MasterCard, and I specifically was focused on the areas of identity and financial inclusion, which are two really important areas for MasterCard, is to get to know who your customer is at a really deep level. Some of the work we did on identity, I was literally interviewing refugees in refugee camps, or work on financial inclusion. I went to a town, 70 miles outside of Nairobi, and watched a town's full of women bank with a box they bury in the ground for every 3 weeks. And I just think understanding exactly who your customer is, what are their beliefs, what are their behaviors, and what are the challenges to the way that they're operating today, helps you uncover all kinds of opportunities to innovate, right? So one of the things at Smile Direct Club, what we learned is one of the innovations that we put together is we actually ship customers all of their aligners, their entire treatment right up front. It's in the blurple box and so on. But between that and all the tools that we put in there to manage their treatment, it got a little overwhelming for them, and we heard this from them by talking and listening to phone calls and all of this, and so what it prompted was us doing an orientation call, like, hey, we know you just got your box. Let us take you through it together. It'll take 10 minutes, but by the time you're done, you'll be much more comfortable and confident. And what we found is the people who we take that orientation call through, they call us less. They complete treatment more frequently, and generally speaking, they start when we go through the orientation call. A lot of people receive their treatment box. Some people receive it and like set it aside and just end up like delaying the beginning of their treatment because they're intimidated. And right, so that orientation call helps pull them through and get them the confidence to get going in this treatment. And so it just comes from listening to and watching the behavior of your customers really, really closely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And at the end of the day, it's interesting conversations like this, just day to day, no matter what you do as a marketer or really in any business. So much of it is actually not focused on the customer. And at the end of the day, all growth ultimately comes from understanding and solving a customer's need in a different way. Of course, there's support things that need to happen in order to enable that type of delivery of value, but that's really it. I don't know if you're familiar with the jobs to be done framework, Clayton Christensen, Bob Mesta, that type of thing. It's the whole the people don't want a 6-inch drill, they want a 6-inch hole in the wall. For me, having spent a lot of time in agencies and then working in a product business in the fintech space here in London, it was just such a moment for me because obviously that is the question and the answer to everything. But oftentimes I find, particularly with more incumbent businesses and incumbent agencies for that matter, that's not always where things start and end. And that's where I think a lot of lost growth actually comes from. So it doesn't surprise me that that would be your answer, given what you've done and the perspective that you have. My follow-up question to it would be, taking it down a level, how do you deliver that within Smile Direct Club? How do you keep your teams oriented on it? You gave that one example, and just real quick, I think the thing that's interesting about that example that I want to expand on briefly is oftentimes, particularly in like smaller challenger brands, startups and scale-ups that might not have a CMO with the experience that you do, oftentimes marketing is advertising, or it's visual identity, or it's these kind of superficial things. But actually the example you gave of you heard this from the customer and what you described setting up that orientation call, that's a product change. Marketing delivered product innovation, which I think is a huge opportunity if you're doing it right. I talk a lot about how marketing should be seen as an innovation function within a business, not just a distribution function, because at the end of the day, marketing is not just about communication, it's the bridge between the product and the customer. So I think that's a really interesting example of how you've done it. But how else are you keeping your teams and your focus, budgets, strategy focused on the customer within Smile Direct Club?
So the two most impactful hours I have every week, and the thing I tell every new team member to do and block off to participate, because they're open meetings in our business, is that we have an hour where we watch videos, obviously with their permission, of customers coming into our Smile shops. And we edit and go through clips and review what they're saying and what potential objections are they having, all of that, and just kind of go through what that journey looks like in great detail. Right. And so that hour, and then we have an hour where we listen to the phones, right? People scheduling, people with payment issues, people, sales calls where we're basically saying, okay, your treatment plan's ready. What's preventing you from going? And you just listen to what the customers are saying, particularly trying to get to like, what is their emotional why? What is the reason that person got up, scheduled an appointment, and showed up in the chair? And how can we make sure when it comes to decision moments that they remember that? Hey, the reason you told me you are sitting here is because of whatever. You're getting back into the dating game, or you're taking control of your health, or what have you. And just bringing that back into the conversation is one element. But also, we hear lots of objections, lots of concerns that they have. We're like, hey, this payment plan may not be working exactly for this type of customer. What can we do about it? And you start challenging yourself and asking those questions, and that's how you get better.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, my last role as CMO, we were a fintech business, but we were B2B. We sold into big banks. So we didn't do it weekly, but we did it monthly. We called it the dog food meeting. So we all sat down in a room and went online or wherever our brand existed to try to consume it as if we were a customer. And I think that's so important, putting yourself in the customer's shoes, being closer to the customer. Because actually, if you're doing it right, part of the role of marketing is to make an organization more customer-centric. I love that tactic. I'm going to put myself out on a limb here, but I have a feeling the answer is going to be yes to this, because what you just said, I've seen, I have the benefit of having done, 40 of these conversations. And then when I was in the fintech world, I had a fintech CMO podcast. So talking to a lot of kind of challenger CMOs and also incumbent CMOs. And this thing that you're talking about, in different shapes and forms, almost everyone who has built a successful disruptive brand does something like this, making their teams spend time listening to, watching, understanding the customer on a regular basis, not just on a campaign planning or annual planning or product development type of cycle. The other thing I see them do, and I'm curious whether or not you do this, is if you're familiar with the 70-20-10 framework for investment. So 70% goes to tried and true, 20% goes to kind of new and next, and 10% is moonshot ideas. Do you have something like that for how you invest your budget or your team's time, where they're not only focused on what works, but they're also intentionally and they're kind of forced to do these more 10x riskier ideas? Do you have something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're so young. Our business is so young. The whole business is eight years from the time that Jordan Katzman, our founder, sent the email to David, who's now our CEO, saying, "Hey, do you think anybody would do this?" Right? We're 8 years from that moment. We're only 5 years in advertising. We learn so much about our business every day, week, month, that completely changes how we want to operate that business. It's probably not 70-20-10 right now for us. We're still learning. I mean, and so we try and test dozens of things at any given moment, right? We've got 4 email tests and 5 tests on the site, and we're trying something else on the phones and versus or in the shops. I mean, the number of tests that we have in our business to try to learn what's optimal in terms of creating the experience the customer is going to get the most out of. That's a huge part of the culture of the business and so on. I mean, I just want to go back for a second also and just talk a little bit about more, how do you get your team to be the customer? My expectation of my leaders and for them to roll down to their teams is, hey, listen, right today for our business, the way people get started is that either order a impression kit where they can do an impression at home, or schedule a scan in one of our Smile shops. We have about 150 of them globally now. And my expectation is, at least on a weekly basis, people are scheduling a scan or once a quarter, ordering a kit and doing it, right? Go through that experience, share that experience, and communicate that to the people who are setting up the kits, who are advertising the kits, who are building out the CRM that makes sure that when you haven't returned it, that you are inspired to do so, and passing that kind of information and personal experience around, right? You get a lot of when my wife did the kit, blah blah blah. That stuff's amazing. That's an incredible input that helps us make our experiences all the better.
I love that, and I think honestly, I'm going to ask you this question at the end. What's one thing that people should do differently? But to me, I would already say just this much of the conversation. If you're not doing this already, you need to be. And if you are doing it, find a way to do it 20% more, 50% more, because there's so much opportunity and so many of the answers are within this. So coming back to the kind of 70-20-10. And yeah, it doesn't have to be kind of a fixed framework like that. And actually, in many cases, it's not. But the culture of innovation, the culture of testing, and another way of saying that is kind of the culture of risk taking, which I think sometimes gets a negative connotation to it, but is so important to finding disruptive growth. So why don't we drill down into this TikTok, case study, I guess. So the article talks about your success on TikTok and how you are consistently one of the top brands on this platform. So my question is, it'd be great to hear a little bit about the strategy, because I think a lot of the people listening, particularly for B2C businesses looking to reach a younger demographic, like I know a lot of your core customers are, that would be interesting. But I think more in general, to our conversation about testing, where I want to start is what led you to make such a bet on TikTok? Because I would imagine if you've been this successful, you either would have had to be there earlier, or you would have had to invested more, focused more than maybe some of your competition. So kind of culturally, strategically, what led you there? And then more specifically, how have you done it in a way that's been this successful?
Yeah, so we've been on TikTok for 3.5 years since the very early days, and it starts by the fact that it's where our customer was. And again, when you listen to your customer, when you talk to your customer regularly, you surveys, you do the research, you just want to be where they are, because that's how you're going to be a part of the conversation. And so we started testing into TikTok, really early, because that's where a really important segment of our customer was, and so. We had to learn our way into our strategy, right? So what we talked about a lot early on was, how do we lean into the creators that are there, right? And so what we found, and we already had an influencer strategy that was really delivering for our business. And so our first step in was to work with influencers and allow the creators to deliver key messages for us, and do things that were frankly native and interesting to the platform, and the reasons why they had built up sizable audiences. And it was really important to us. This is true all around for us as it relates to spokespeople or influencers, is it had to be really authentic, right? They have to actually go through treatment. They have to be real customers. They have to be talking about their own experiences. So that authenticity had to be baked in, really early. And so, really that was kind of the start of it for us. And then two other things kind of happened. One is, we're like, okay, how can we take assets that we're creating in other platforms and make them relevant here? And so, by way of example, we have a character, Didi, who's our challenger brand voice, if you will. And so we found ways for us to create, I'll call it native friendly content for her. Right. And so, built out more branded content with kind of all your Byron Sharpie stuff, right? With audio mnemonics and again, having the character, the colors, all that stuff. And so we built that out. And we wanted to do that in a way that felt platform consistent, for lack of a better word. And then finally, we also wanted to build up our own organic audience on the platform. And so we turned to a team member who was super interested in this. And actually, she's a great story. Her name is Emily. And the Emily story is, she started her experience with SmileDirectClub as a model in a photo shoot for us. So she had never heard of the brand before, but we had hired her as a model. She did a photo shoot with us. She was like, hey, actually, I'd like to straighten my teeth. So she then straightened her teeth with us, became a customer, loved the experience, and actually applied to be someone that worked for the company, a team member. And so, and now we've got her as a face of the brand, out in TikTok. And she is really good. She and her team, and there's a whole set of folks that are kind of paying attention to this stuff, are looking for, what are some of the trends? What are some of the, things that we can insert ourselves into or replicate? And a lot of TikTok, as you know, is kind of, this side-by-side replication. What can we jump in on and make our brand relevant? And she does that for us on a regular basis and does a great job.
What are some of the other areas that you were investing in, very focused on? So it seems like TikTok as a channel has obviously delivered very good results for you. If you kind of take a step back and look at the macro marketing strategy right now, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a challenger brand, and we're still working on making people aware that there's a better way to straighten your teeth, right? And so, we use our awareness channels like linear TV, and of course, even more so, connected TV or OTT, whatever you want to call that, in a much more targeted way to deliver kind of those awareness-oriented messages. And YouTube plays a role for us there, also. And then really what the goal for that is just get people to the website to educate themselves, right? And so where Facebook and paid social really sit in that consideration level, right? They've been to the website, we can retarget them, bring them back, take them through a broader story, and look to get that lead, because really the hardest working part of our media isn't really paid media at all, it's CRM. Right. So once we get that lead, we can take a person through an education journey. And because of the nature of our customer experience today, there's a lot of places for people to kind of get lost in the process, right? Whether it's, insurance, or I don't know if I want to do this now, or, whatever, there's lots of places. And so what CRM can do is just pull a person slowly through the education journey to get them to the place where they're ready to say, all right, I'm ready to go now. And so, and that's, between CRM and paid search, which is, it does a lot of the cleanup work for the, for highly interested people. That's what brings people in and gets them to either buy that kit or schedule that scan. And then again, CRM picks it up after that moment again and pulls them through, make sure they show up for the appointment, make sure they return that kit. And that's what gets them ultimately into a set of prescribed aligners from their doctor.
It's interesting just hearing you talk for 30 minutes now. Obviously, you said it at the beginning, being more customer-centric, but even when you haven't said that explicitly, your answers have all been about that. How did you go onto TikTok? Well, you focused on kind of what I would say, creating content that was contextual for the platform, understanding what people wanted to see, tapping into influencers that were already speaking to the customer. CRM, is that, like you're talking about, how do you actually have a customer-centric focus on what the experience is for someone with your business? And so it's not like marketing silo. It's not starting from your perspective and working out to the customer. It's starting from the customer perspective and working in. So I just think that's interesting, like how it's coming across. I just wanted to draw a line under it. And I'd love to kind of maybe use that as a springboard to talk about purpose. So it was one of the things I know you and your team wanted to talk about in this conversation, the impact of purpose-driven companies by the consumer. And then, while this might not go out for a little while, it's mid-July, we just released our research on how challenger brands are using purpose. And so I'd love to, just tee that up. Like, what is the impact of purpose-driven companies? What does that mean to SmileDirectClub? And how do you think about developing that and executing on that as part of how you're building the brand?
Yeah, great. So I got my first taste of really being personally involved in very high purpose work when I was at MasterCard. And one of the things I did when I was helping run innovation there was MasterCard received the first public company grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to go co-fund the Lab for Financial Inclusion together in Nairobi, Kenya. I mentioned that before, and the job of that was to create net new products that would help get people connected to formal financial systems, which has unbelievable list of benefits once you can get somebody to do that. And so that's one of those things that once you have that experience, once I literally stood in the hills of Kenya and had a 75-year-old tea grower with tears in his eyes talking about how he finally believes that he can pass his business to his kids now because we help them self-aggregate how they sell, and the profit margins were there where they hadn't been previously. And all of a sudden, I mean, you get that moment, and you're like, I can't go back. I can't go back to doing something that I don't feel connected to anymore. And that's what I really love about SmileDirectClub is, how many times have we heard, a smile's a window to your soul. The first thing people notice about you is your smile. And when people come into our shop and again, we just kind of try to understand why they're there. The stories that they bear are deeply personal, right? And my child asked me why I never smile in photos, or I always laugh like this. Or you get those stories that are they're really personal. And if you just look through our before and after page on our website, and just say, look at the before picture, look at the after picture. The smile journey that they went on is not the journey. We are a part of a much bigger transformation for these people, whether they're taking control of their health or again, going through a divorce or headed off to college or some other major transformation. I mean, they're wearing makeup, they change their hair, whole life transformations that they're going through. And we're just a part of that, right? And so knowing that we can help them have the confidence that comes from a smile they love, and the stories that we get back in social media or emails directly to me on a weekly basis are unbelievably moving. My favorite email I send every week is at noon on Mondays. I send an email called Inspired by Why. And it is literally nothing but customer stories that they've given to us, right? About how this has transformed them. We had a TV spot that we ran for a good amount of time with a woman named Chamani, and she opened the spot unprovoked by us, unscripted. She said, Smile Direct Club changed my life, right? How do you not get out of bed for that? It's what the team members that what I call bleed blurple, which is our corporate color, the people that literally come in every day and show up for the brand, they feel personally connected to this mission, and to me that's my favorite part of the job. I mean, how do you not get excited about it?
I thought you said blurple earlier, but I didn't want to call it out because I wasn't sure if you misspoke. Okay, so that's good to know. Blurple is the company color. So as a follow-up to that, so actually how you're talking about purpose is how we believe businesses should be talking about purpose and what we found in our research. Customers, yes, a lot of them want kind of, when you say the term purpose, particularly in the context of a marketing conversation or speaking to marketers, it's ESG, it's environmentally friendly, it's giving back, it's all those things. And be curious if there is anything that you're doing. But what we found in our research and try to guide clients in the work that we do is it needs to be not only authentic to who you are, but it needs to be tied to how you make money as a business. That's the only place that you can truly claim what your purpose is. Otherwise, and you see these stories of Unilever mandating top down that every brand, including mayonnaise, needs to have a purpose on how it's saving the world. Yes, that's what customers want, but they want it if it's authentic. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's exactly what you're doing is you're working inside out from your business, what it delivers for the customer, again, being customer-centric. Do you do anything around kind of the environmental, social, political maybe side of things with your brand purpose as well?
So let's just back up. I want to address the other piece, which is, for me, brand purpose means that the usage of your product delivers disproportionate and outsized benefit to the customer and beyond. But first, it has to start with that disproportional benefit to the customer, right? At $2,000, the impact that people come back and tell us that it has on their lives are massively outsized, right, to that. And that's how you can feel purpose. Again, same thing when I was talking about financial inclusion. The benefits of getting connected to formal financial systems are super outsized compared to what we ask of the consumer in that process. And so to me, that's where brand purpose comes from, is you're just delivering disproportionate benefit. As we think about our business, two things. One, we created a foundation, Smile Direct Club Foundation, that obviously focuses on helping people in moments of transition. I mentioned before that we're often a part of a person's life transformation when they're moving from one stage to another. And that's exactly what the foundation focuses on, building programs with key charities that help deliver people programs that, when they're in this transition, whether it's going from active military service to civilian life, or from an abusive household to independence. Then there's a number of other programs that we've built out, and so that foundation really focuses on that. Smile Direct Club itself, outside of the foundation, also has a huge impact, and we're really spending some time now focusing on diversity in dentistry and making sure that existing dental deserts, places where you just can't get access to care, that we're solving for that we're seeing underrepresented groups in the dental community, enter dental school, enter dental hygienist school, and so we're sponsoring scholarships in that environment as well. And so all of these are areas that are important to our business. And again, our team members can get really excited about because they're having an impact on the communities that we're operating in.
That's amazing. So, I feel like we got to 20% of what we said we were going to talk about, but I think that's a sign of a good conversation, and hopefully the audience agrees. So we are out of time, but John, just to wrap it up, last question for me that I said I would ask earlier is, after listening to this episode, what is one thing that you would recommend people actually do differently in their marketing roles right now?
Oof. I think it ties back to the most recent conversation, which is make sure you understand the purpose behind your brand, and make sure your team members and your marketing connect your team and your customers to that purpose in an active way. Because that's going to help elevate your brand and help you break through, right? You're not selling a widget, you're selling something much more impactful and important, and the benefit that you're providing is disproportionate. I think there's so many brands that don't take the moment to understand what that means, but there's a bunch of great brands that have, by the way. But I do think that as a marketer, you need to understand what that is for your brand, and articulate it clearly, and make sure everybody, every team member knows it, and every customer knows it about your business.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy thing to, sometimes businesses actually do step back and do a full exercise on that, but I think that's an easy thing to kind of just gloss over almost if you're listening to this. But actually, press pause, put it on your list, actually sit down and gut check for yourself. How do you deliver? How do you stack up against this right now? And a little bit of time invested in that on a regular basis, however you want to do it, however you want to ritualize it, is going to go a long way. So, John, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. At the very least, you've probably got one new customer out of this in the UK
Great.
over here at our family. But yeah, thank you so much for making the time. It's great to be connected and really enjoyed it.
Eric, thank you so much for your time.
Take care. Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with me, email me at eric@wearerival.com or find me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.